Hey, how's it
We'll be,
going? We made it.
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Dudes One Up Gaming Podcast. My name is Ian,
And I'm Chris.
and here's another week of video game news.
Did you
And
did you almost say another week of Nintendo?
yeah, like I'm Nintendo. I've been Nintendo fanboy since episode one. So, and we
I
we
mean,
got more Nintendo news going on the way. So,
nothing wrong with
I'm
that.
not gonna I'm not gonna deny it. I'm not gonna deny it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's been an interesting week. Before we get into the news, I've been on the road all week. As you can see, we're not doing our standard green screen layout.
Hmm.
I'm currently stuck. Yeah, I'm currently stuck in Houston, Texas, doing my normal day job. Just kind of chilling right now. Got out a little bit early today, which is nice because usually it's been 14-hour days. Today was only at 12, so I'm glad to be able to be here to join you guys because there was some concern earlier this week on whether or not I'd actually be able to make the podcast or not. So
Yeah.
I think Chris had some backup plans just in case, but I'm
I
glad I'm
made a little bit
here.
of some backup plans. Yeah. A friend of
I'm
ours,
glad I'm
Krista, had
here.
agreed to maybe possibly make it if she could be like a little bit late.
Yeah. So I'm glad I could be here.
I'm glad you
Again,
could be
just got
here.
off. Yeah, just got off of work, enjoying some fine whiskey. I'm
Mm,
drinking straight from the bottle. So
nice.
pardon what will happen later on this evening.
No,
But
don't pardon him at all. Hold him accountable for everything. He's gonna be having so much fun. I am boring again, and I'm drinking water. Although, in a twist of fate, I have two different brands.
what? Oh, you rebel! You absolute rebel! Oh
Oh
man.
man.
Well, getting into our standard format. We got
What's
we got some
happening
games
soon?
coming up. Got some games coming up this week. It is a very light Xbox week, actually. I did some deep searching in the
It's been a
two
light
hours that I had
it's been a light
to see.
Xbox lifetime, man. Nothing good comes out for
Well, I
Xbox.
mean, the last couple of weeks there have been some decent releases, but this is a pretty PlayStation heavy week in the sense of things that are going on. But overall, it's just not. There's no super crazy releases except for maybe one or two things later this week. Released
Yeah.
today is was East 8,
Is that how
Lacrimosa
you
of
say it?
Dana.
East?
It is. I had to Google it.
Yeast.
It's
Okay, yeah.
East.
I've for the longest time I have never known. I was like, yeast?
Yeah.
Weiss.
Is
Is.
it Wise? Is it yeah? Is it Is?
East.
No,
Okay,
but
it's
it's
East. Alright.
East 8, the Lacrimosa of Dana. It's coming out for the PlayStation 4, the Vita. It came out today for the PC, and it also is out for the Nintendo Switch. This is the eighth game of the East RPG series.
Yeah, now do you know
Uh,
anything about East? Because I know nothing about it.
I know a little bit about it. I know the main character kind of follows suit. You've kind of been followed the same character through all 8 games. Uh, but at the same time, a lot of the game is like I accidentally wound up on this deserted island, and let's figure out what we have to do from here.
Okay.
It's not a very in-depth RPG, but at the same time, I love me some good RPGs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're great or not, and I'll probably end up playing it at some point. I've played some of the East games before. Never been super impressed. I've skipped a couple.
Okay.
I feel like I almost feel like the Tail series and the East series are kind of like hand in. Every
Are
now
they?
and again they
Alright.
have a great one, but for the most part they're like kind of hit or miss.
So is the
Uh,
East series is it contiguous or is it like independent like Final Fantasy?
it's technically continuous.
Okay.
I mean, like the main character is the main character, but like he never ages. It never really changes. So it's
Gotcha.
like
It's the land before time.
yeah, it's the Simpsons of RPGs,
Okay. All right.
pretty, which isn't a terrible thing.
I'm down for that.
But
So
tomorrow we've got some stuff.
we do have some stuff tomorrow, and one of the things I found this one, and I was like, I can't believe this is being allowed to happen. Uh, so, Ian, do you have Windows 10?
Oh, of course, I have Windows 10.
Would you pop open your start menu and see if you have Minesweeper installed?
Let me search for Minesweeper. I do not actually. It is
Nor
not.
do I.
Wait.
Microsoft dropped Minesweeper in Windows 10. They kept Solitaire and all the other stuff, but they dropped Minesweeper even after they rewrote it for Windows 8. They
Yeah,
dropped it for 10.
I currently says check your account. Microsoft Minesweeper is currently not available in your account. Here's the error code in case you need it.
Right?
That is unfortunate.
Yeah. So I guess some other company decided they wanted to release Minesweeper so that you could have it back on Windows 10, and it comes out tomorrow in early access on Steam. So if you want, you could pay. I don't know how much, some probably small
Yeah,
amount for early access of Minesweeper. What features they could be adding to Minesweeper throughout the lifespan of early access, I don't know, but
multiplayer. That's all.
multiplayer.
Like Bomberman, but Minesweeper. Like you're just on opposite sides of the corner and you're trying to make your
Maybe,
way in.
maybe.
I don't know. It's Minesweeper. It's probably going to be really good.
You know what
I
I
mean,
should do?
it's
I
been a
should turn
game
off this
since.
light because it's blinding. Oh, that's so much better.
There you go. Yeah, but I mean, like it's Minesweeper. Like, is it a bummer that it's not automatic? Like, you don't automatically have a copy of it? Yeah, but it's probably gonna be fun nonetheless.
Well, you can go download the free version. Like there is a free Minesweeper that's been
Okay.
available for a long time because Microsoft's version is actually bugged and it can generate maps that are unwinnable. The free version
Okay.
actually like makes sure it doesn't generate
Oh, okay.
unwinnable maps. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Okay.
So I've seen.
Also coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Also coming out tomorrow is Yakuza 6: The Song of Life. The Yakuza series is a big Japanese RPG series. It's been around for a little bit. Kind of started on the PS3, made its way to the PS4. I would say like a year or two ago, they did a prequel called Yakuza Zero that started to gain a little bit of traction here in the United States. So it'll be interesting to see
Is
what kind
that
of what.
is that the game
Yeah.
where you can run a cabaret club?
Yes.
Okay, I saw somebody playing that on Twitch, and I was like, "What is this?" Because I didn't know what the like. I never heard of it, and I thought it was just a game about running a cabaret club. Because he was in there for like an hour just doing that, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting. Like, I wonder why this is a thing." So I went to look it up, and like, I couldn't find anything by the name of like Cabaret Club Simulator, and I was like, "All right, well, I don't know."
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, it's very much. Trying to think of the best way to explain it. Uh, I mean, it's kind of like a crime drama, but like a brawling action beat 'em up kind of
okay,
game. Um, and it's got a pretty much it's got an all-star cast for Japanese voice actors. So I mean, some of the cast has been in movies like Battle Royale, Death Note, and like it's just they're good quality actors.
okay,
It's a Final Fantasy JRPG with Streets of Rage style brawling, so it's a little bit of a different kind of format with the leveling up and the fighting on screen. So it it's a very interesting game with some of the stuff that goes on. From what I hear, this game is probably about 25 to 30 hours.
okay.
Um, so it's not going to be a super long game, but since it is the Yakuza series is a Sega series game, so there are things like an arcade that you can go to where you can play like Space Harrier and Outrun and Virtual Fighter 5. Like there's
That's cool.
copies of those games inside of the game. So like that's there's a lot of content in the game to kind of extend the gameplay.
Gotcha.
So it's gonna be an interesting release tomorrow. I'm excited for it. It's only coming out for the PS4, so if you don't have a PS4, I'm sorry. And
I'll live.
you know, yeah, I may have to break out the PS4 eventually for it.
All right.
Sorry, I'm drinking a lot of whiskey and it's getting caught in my throat.
Yo, don't even worry about it. So aside from Yakuza tomorrow, apparently we also have the Don't Starve Mega Pack, um,
Mm-hmm.
which I presume just includes Don't Starve and Don't Starve Together.
It's Don't Starve Together, and I think one more thing. I'm gonna just double check here because I looked it up earlier when I added it,
Gotcha.
and
Yeah, I've actually played a decent amount of Don't Starve Together. I've never played Don't Starve, but I understand it's like the same thing as Together, just Together has the multiplayer component to it. And
right.
yeah, I mean, we've played some of that. We built fences and farms, and we like
Yeah,
laid
I think you
traps
and
all
me.
over the hay fields to capture all the rabbits and everything. Maybe
Yeah,
it was fun.
you and me actually played Don't Starve Together a little bit.
Okay.
But It's Don't Starve Together, Don't Starve Reign of Giants, and Don't Starve Shipwreck.
Hmm.
So it's the two DLC. Don't Starve and the two DLC, and then Don't Starve Together, all in one
Gotcha.
pack.
Okay.
On Steam right now, it is a bundle that's 33% off. It's 27.
All right.
So if you haven't had the opportunity to play this game, this is actually going to be a very fun. Like this is worth playing. Don't Starve is an excellent game, and it's definitely worth.
It is. It is an interesting little game. Yeah. Yeah.
So later on this week as well, April 20th, which is I believe Friday. Uh, it's God of War. It's getting the reboot for PS4,
Oh, it's a
where
reboot.
this
It's
is
not another
the
one.
no, it's a new one, but it's a reboot of the series. It's actually Kratos and his son. So I'm interested to see what the storyline kind of is around that. It's more of a
But it's like a continuation of the series, though. It's just like much later.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
It's Norwegian god based. It's not Greek god based.
Oh, I guess he ran out of Greek gods. He killed them all.
Yeah, I mean he killed them all. So yeah, it's a Norwegian god based game. So it's all of the previews are getting excellent reviews. So God of War on PS4, an exclusive. It's going to be pretty incredible. But the big thing on April 20th that I'm most excited for, Nintendo Cardboard, the Nintendo Labo is coming out. The robot kit, the backpack robot kit's coming out. The variety kit that's got the RC cars, the fishing rod, the house, the motorbike, the piano. Like, I'm I'm so stoked for that. I'm Nintendo fanboy through and through, and I couldn't be more excited for this currently. I don't know how you feel about it. I know a lot of people, there's mixed reviews because of like cardboard, so on and so forth. But
It's another Nintendo experiment. We're gonna see how it goes, right? Like sometimes they work and sometimes they completely bomb. So we'll see
yeah,
how it
yeah,
goes.
yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm pretty stoked. I mean, Nintendo as a company. I mean, a lot of people just, I know it's surprising, but a lot of people don't know this. Nintendo started as a card company.
Yeah,
They used
I
to
did know
make
that.
playing cards
Yeah.
before they got into the video game industry.
Mm-hmm.
So they're used to being a tactile handheld company. If you really want to break it down, that's what they do. They're a tactile handheld company that that changed in the times and said, hey, we can make a handheld thing like a controller, and you can control something on a screen, and it went from there. So I'm super stoked to see how this kind of plays back. I I'm excited to get my hands on the piano and the motorbike personally. I think I'm going to purchase the variety kit as soon as I get back into town. So
Okay.
we'll see what happens. The robot kit is maybe a little bit like, depending. It seems like it may be a little small for me as a large adult male, but at the same time, who knows?
Yeah.
It'll be fun. I'm going to want to talk about this later, so we can move on from
Yeah, we
this
got
and
we got a whole segment planned for that.
yeah.
But as per usual, we've got the what we've been playing recently. So I know you've been out of town. You what have you been playing? Have you squeezed in any games?
So, just to give you a sense of what I've been doing work wise, uh, I've I've worked pretty much 78 hours in the last 5 days,
Jeez, man.
and we could strike a day because that was travel between Washington, Houston, Texas. So minimum like it's I've pretty much been working and sleeping. I did manage to get a couple of Fortnite rounds in after it was released because I really wanted to get my hands on it and figure it out and see what happened. It's
Did you
super
win?
cool. I did not win.
I mean,
I
who
have not.
wins? You know?
Yeah. Well, you mean like I what was it the first day I played Fortnite? I had gotten the win and I had posted it up on the Discord
Yeah, I saw that.
and I was like, oh, this is great, and I haven't won since. I haven't won,
Yeah, no, it's
but
all luck. Yeah.
yeah. So, but the Portafort's cool. It builds a nice little structure it's very helpful if you don't know how to build.
Okay.
So it's cool. Played a couple of rounds there, but I'm hoping to when I get back into town on Wednesday, I will have a little bit more time to finish playing Nino Kuni, and then maybe get into a couple other games. But
Cool.
what have you been playing?
I have been dipping my toes into lots of things that I haven't done in a while, or things that are like new to me this week. I've been playing more Vermintide 2, of course. That's it's me and my buddies getting together and playing all that. Um, I was playing a little bit of Celeste, um,
Really?
and I bought this game because everybody tells me it's fantastic, right? It's awesome,
Yeah.
it's glory, wonderful. I bought it, I played it for like 20 minutes, and then I refunded it on Steam because I'm just not interested. I don't want another type platformer that is a duplicate of I Want to Be the Guy or another Super Meat Boy. Like I
Yeah.
just and then somebody out there, maybe even you, is gonna be like, "Fuck you for your opinion, and it's a better game than all that." I'm like, I don't care. I don't care.
No.
I've also been playing Civ 5. A friend of mine,
Okay.
we were playing Vermintide, and we had like a losing streak because the people we kept getting paired with were actively sabotaging our games. So yeah, so
Terrifying.
we just got fed up and we played some Civ 5, and we're still in the middle of that game. I think we're about 20 hours into it. We have defeated Japan and China, and I believe 7 out of the 12 city states are defeated as well. And so all that's left that we have to take care of are Russia, who's a large concern, but who has like no hostile stance against us. Like we've heard nothing from Russia, which is fine by me. And then
Right.
the Ottoman Empire is also massive. They have this huge like fleet out in the middle of the ocean that's like just infantry and like an invasion force that's just sitting out there. Like you can't move battleships through the ocean because there are no free tiles to stick them on.
So are you going for a military victory or are you going for
We're
base raise?
trying to get victory any way we can. Military victory is probably going to be our most likely outcome, but we are also trying to do cultural. So
Okay.
we're working on that. I have also been playing something that came out just a couple days ago. It's called Maelstrom. I didn't know too much about it when I picked it up. All I knew is that it's like a naval game, and you sail around in like old timey ships, and you got cannons, and you shoot at each other, and like it felt a little bit like Sid Meier's Pirates from back in the day, if you remember like the ship kind
Yeah.
of system in that. And I was like, oh, that's kind
That
of
was
cool.
that was a great game. That was a
Oh,
great game.
so good, yeah. Um, and so yeah, so I picked up Maelstrom, and it's that you sail around in a ship, and you shoot other ships, and there's like sea monsters and like the weather effects, and like the you have to like deal with currents and like whirlpools and all that kind of stuff while you're doing this. And beyond all that, it's also a battle royale, which I didn't know when I picked it up, but I kind of don't mind this one because there's never more than about 12 people in a game, and there are NPCs in there that you try to fight, and there's sea monsters that you have to deal with, and beyond all that, there's the other players you have to deal with. So it's much less about like tight control. Like it's not a Twitch game, right? It's a
Right.
how do you think about it, how do you outsmart this, and a little bit of execution because you actually have to aim your cannons, right? But like it's a cannon, how accurate can it be over like a given distance, and you have to like figure out velocity, how fast they're going, and what their currents are doing. But it's interesting. I played a few rounds of it. I enjoy it. I don't know if I'm gonna stick with it for a long time, but I like it. I may go back to
For
it.
what it is. Okay.
It's an interesting little twist on the whole thing. So it's a BR game that I can actually not hate, which
Okay.
few and far between.
So on the note of this being a battle royale game, and this is a brief aside, a very brief aside.
Yeah,
PAX East was not too long ago.
True.
And a lot of the
I was
content
actually
is
in
now
California during PAX at a different convention.
right, but that's PAX West. PAX
Right.
East
Okay.
is the East Coast.
Yeah.
So PAX East was not too long ago. I'm a really good friend of mine, coworker, a peer of mine that actually does all the lighting for a lot of those big events. He was over there and kind of gave me the heads up. They did I don't know if you're familiar with Acquisitions Incorporated.
I know that name.
Yeah, it's a Dungeons and Dragons campaign,
Yep.
5e.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
Okay. Yep.
it's Patrick Rothfuss and a bunch of the guys over at Penny Arcade.
Yep.
And they've been doing for a while. It's humor based. It's humor based. They did a PUBG variant episode where they all fell out of the sky onto a map. There was a circle. They had to go get into the circle, the whole 9 yards. It was extremely entertaining. It was about 2.5 hours, 3 hours long for the episode. highly recommend giving it a watch if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons,
I
or
am
if you're
kind of.
interested
Now,
in
was this
how
like a battle map? I imagine there's a
Oh no,
large.
it was PUBG but 5e.
Right. But I'm asking if it was did they have a battle mat that they were doing it on?
Yeah.
Or okay, all
Oh
right.
no, there was no battle map, but there was a giant screen with a map that had in the corner. They dropped in and there was their team of four, and it said like 99 alive in the corner, and it slowly counted down as they were talking into things, and then all of a sudden there was like a noise that went off, and then there was a circle that showed up, and everyone was like, "What the hell's going on?" And then all of a sudden you saw a storm, like the outside thing coming in, and they were like, and it really put the pressure on the players to make quick snap decisions, because they were like, there was no time to discuss and talk about strategy. It was like, we need to go do things now.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting dichotomy between what Dungeons and Dragons is and what battle royale computer games are. And I thought it was very successful. They did a great job with
That
it.
does sound pretty
They
cool.
had
Yeah.
Yeah, they had decks of cards that, like, as you moved, you would draw from the deck, and it would give you an encounter, or let you pass, and like chests that gave you random loot. I think the whole thing was that they gave you, you were allowed to hold 4 items total max. That was your loadout. And if you held something that your character could actually use, you had access to your character sheet. So if you were a rogue and you had like a staff instead of daggers, you couldn't do any of your rogue abilities. But the second you had a dagger, you could start. And it had different levels. It had like the gray level, the green level, the gold level.
Huh.
Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It was very entertaining. They
That
did
does
a
sound
great
fun.
job with it.
Nice.
The second thing I want to ask you about before we move on,
Yeah.
as a Celeste fan,
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Celeste. I did play it on the Switch. It got me through the first quarter of the year. Um, I thought it was a fantastic game. I can understand on PC it be feeling like a Meat Boy kind of, or I want to be on the Boshi kind of game. Um, is there? Are you just not like a platformer fan of that variety, or is it just not a, like, I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
the
So
appropriate.
I I don't think I go for difficult platformers like that.
Okay,
And I
that's
don't mean
fair.
like that platformers are difficult, because like there are some platformers that get pretty difficult that like I enjoy very much. But I think there are platformers that are purposefully extremely difficult in terms of
Right.
execution. Like they are
I want to be.
fully execution, and it's like every level is timing, and then you reset to the beginning of the level every time. Like that's a genre, and I
I
refer
want to
to
be the
it as the I
Boshi
wanna
Super
be
Meat
genre.
Boy.
Like I wanna be a
Yeah,
genre, right? Um, and
that's
I'm
totally.
not into that.
That's fair. I personally, for me, I felt like Celeste was a very casual platformer. It was very open and relaxed, like this, because you only had to operate a screen per screen. So as you pass the screen, that's pretty much where you reset. So like you had a little bit of challenge per screen, and then you moved on, and then if you died, you got back to the beginning of the screen. So I thought it was. I mean, personally, as I thought it was a game that was very accessible for a lot of people. I don't know if you played it with a keyboard mouse compared to
I tried
controller,
both.
but I think the controller is a way better option.
Yeah, control is
But
better for it for sure. But
I do implore you, please play the game in full. The thing that I think it does better than Super Meat Boy and like the I want to is that it has a good. It deals with depression and mental illness to like a small degree.
hmm,
And for me personally, as a guy who deals with depression, it kind of hit home a little bit to it,
okay.
and it was nice. So I mean, I will you play it full? I mean, that's up to you. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you're
I
not
think,
alone. A lot of people love that
yeah.
game to death. I don't know. It could
For
have
me,
even been the mood that I was in when I sat down to play it, but I wasn't having it.
for me, for me personally, I still have it as my game of the year.
Okay.
So, and that's just kind of how I feel. I think it's really worth the exploration. You don't have to try to get, like, it's the completionist side of it is for hardcore gamers, but for a $20 game, just to roll through it. I think it's worth the casual playthrough.
Fair enough.
But that's all.
That's fair.
That's all I'm going to say about it. I'm not gonna harp on. There's plenty of other gaming news going currently. A lot of it I'm not too up to this week because just I've been crazy working. The only minor thing that I saw that I consider minor is that Halo 5 multiplayer reskinned the map so you had the Titanic on it. So, with the smokestacks and everything, like they did a good job. I mean, props to the Halo 5 community.
Nice.
I mean, I don't know how big it is, but from what I hear is that they're pretty awesome when it comes to the mods. So
Yeah,
I
really
think
any
that
community that has dedicated and passionate fans will create just cool stuff. I mean, you'll always make a higher quality product if you care about the thing you're making. Like if you just want it to be awesome and you've got the time and resources to do it, like you'll just make it awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some other like smaller news that's going around. Have you ever played The Hunter?
I have not.
No, it's a hunting game. There was an original one, I guess, that was like super DLC heavy and you had to buy literally everything and everyone hated it. But there's a newer one that's Hunter Call of the Wild, came out, I don't know, some time ago, a year maybe. And it's not like pay to win or anything. Like there's a bunch of DLC for it, but it's not like you super need this. It's like ATVs and tents and whatever. But they just released a 2 gigabyte update for free for everybody that added another species to the game, jackrabbits, that you can hunt now. So I mean, I thought that was cool.
Okay. Kind of cool.
And then I don't know if you follow Concerned Ape on Twitter, but he tweeted again a couple days ago and said that the Stardew Valley multiplayer is coming out in about a month. So
okay, that's huge news.
Please,
I know.
Hurry.
I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. I'm a Stardew Valley fan. You're a Stardew Valley fan. Well, I haven't. I give it props to everybody that I know that ask for games to play. I'm like, you gotta play Stardew Valley. The multiplayer has been a thing that we've all been waiting for about a year and a half. I want to say
about a year. Yeah, since it came out, it's been promised since it came out as like this is coming in the future, like it'll happen. So we're pumped that it's getting here.
Yeah. So in about a month, could be 6 weeks, could be 8 to 12 weeks, but we'll see what happens.
All I know is I'm gonna play it again when it comes out. Like, I'm ready for some more Stardew Valley.
Now I've seen it streamed on Twitch. I know I've seen builds of multiplayer of Stardew Valley streamed on Twitch.
Yep.
It has been tested, so maybe we're closer than I'm giving it credit for, and hopefully it comes out in a month. It'd be pretty incredible. I mean, you and I will definitely play it. I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
I've got. I think we have a 4-player party like ready to go. Like I'm pretty sure that we've got like we could probably put together a 6-player party, to be totally honest, but I think it only supports 4. So
I think it only supports 4, yeah.
Which is still a lot. So like I was expecting 2, but for you to be able to have like 4, but like with player housing and also you can interact with NPCs and get married in other people's games, I'm like, how much work did you put into this?
Yeah.
Because it's not just a patch. Like it's not just multiplayer that's being added. It's a whole new content patch. Like it's 1.3.
Okay, that I didn't know.
I didn't know. Like it's huge. Yeah, it's another like content situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
this guy loves working on this game, man. He's a powerhouse of development.
And that only works out best for us as gamers and the people who enjoy the game. That really only works out the really best for us.
Oh, yeah.
The last piece of news that I have, which I won't harp on very long, but I will give a little bit of backstory, is back in 2007, there was a documentary called The King of Kong: Fistful of Quarters that kind of documented the whole history of Donkey Kong and the challenge to get over 1 million points in Donkey Kong. There was a gentleman whose name was Billy Mitchell, who set various arcade records throughout the 1980s, including Donkey Kong. He held the highest score from Donkey Kong from 1982 to 2000, and then he lost it in 2000 and then got it again in 2000. and at this juncture in time was still the reigning high score champion of this game. This is all done by a company called Twin Galaxies, who own and operate the International Video Game Hall of Fame, and they work with the Guinness Book of World Records to maintain these world records when it comes to arcade games. And that's the key is arcade game. About a couple of days ago, about 3-4 days ago, actually to go back a little bit further, back in February, there was a request to inspect the record that was the first ever 1,000,000-point game of Donkey Kong. And unfortunately, after review of a couple of months and everything going on, I'm going to try to find the articles here again to make sure that what I say is absolutely correct. When it comes to Twin Galaxies, they want you to play the game on a piece of arcade hardware. And unfortunately, it has been proven, quote unquote, that it wasn't possible on the arcade hardware to get that score at that time.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit of that article, and they were saying that some of the level loading was
Yes.
like timed slightly off, you know. And so like the conclusion was like there was a bunch of other stuff they looked at, but the conclusion was that it wasn't played on an arcade cabinet. They didn't like point specifically to like, oh, here's what it was played on, but they just said it wasn't an arcade cabinet.
They said it wasn't played on the official like arcade hardware.
Right.
And it's a bummer to the community, but they stripped Billy of all of his records.
Including
There
Pac-Man.
are other people, including Pat. Well, yeah, which that's a different story, but it's a bummer to the community. This was a man that was very famous in the arcade community for 2 to 3 decades, and there are other million point Donkey Kong.
Yeah, he was like
games
12th place or something like that when the request was submitted or whatever.
Yeah, at this point, yeah. So, but it just sucks that it was a record that was held from 82 to 2000, and
Right.
now that's wiped clean.
Well, he released a statement earlier today that he has proof that he was on an arcade cabinet, and apparently it's like forthcoming. So
Okay, so we'll see
we'll
what
see.
happens.
It's still developing or something.
But it's an interesting story nonetheless, and it's big. Personally, I think it's big in gaming. From a man that was born in the '80s and played through the '80s. So we'll see what happens. And I won't harp on it for too much longer, but it's pretty disappointing. If you have not seen the documentary "The King of Kong: A Fist of Fingers," I highly recommend it. It came out in 2007. I think it still holds like a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think Metacritic has it as like a 93 or 83 out of 100. So, across the board, I think that's a highly watchable. So, if you like games and you like documentaries, give it a watch, formulate your own opinion, see how you feel about everybody involved. And then, maybe we'll discuss it later on, Send me an email, let me know that I'm an asshole and I'm defending the wrong guy. So, we'll move on from that, I guess.
Hey, remember the thing you wanted to talk about earlier?
The Nintendo
Yeah, the
LABO,
LABO,
and
yeah.
how awesome it's gonna be. Yeah, yeah.
Let's go into that segment. Tell me
So-
about the LABO.
So, getting into the whole concept of the LABO, and I think a lot of people, the initial reaction was like, it's a whole bunch of cardboard, which that's fair. It is. It's a whole bunch
yeah,
of cardboard. Sure. But like I said before, Nintendo was a playing card company. They moved into the world of video games, but peripherals have always been their thing. Like the concept of like coming out with a console and then supporting it with a million different items that you could purchase. That's Nintendo's thing. I can go down the
Rumble
list
Pack.
without even getting to the 64, starting with the Nintendo.
Oh
You
yeah.
had the NES. You had the NES Advantage, was the arcade style joystick.
Yep.
You had the gun, the
The
flash gun,
zapper.
which
Yeah.
you had the zapper. You had the Rob robot. No
Oh
one
God,
remembers the
Rob.
Rob
Yeah.
robot. Power pad. You had the power glove. There was the 4 by
So
4
bad.
button, the 4 by 4 button thing that you had for like the
Yep.
track and field thing,
Yep.
which I can't remember. The Freedom Deck or
Hmm.
whatever it was called. I don't
Yeah.
remember. You had the Game Genie. It was a third party thing, but at the same time, it was still supported to a degree.
Yeah.
God, what else? What other things for the fucking Nintendo?
For the NES, I think
Um,
you've covered it.
yeah, yeah. I think for the NES, they pretty much covered it. And then even like the Super Nintendo had, the Super Nintendo had a mouse, had a cleaning kit. There was the Miracle Piano for Mario Paint or whatever it was.
Hmm.
There was the NES Advantage. There was the Super Scope, the rocket launcher thing for the Super Nintendo that no one remembers but like me. For the
Dude, I
64,
had
you
one.
had
Get out of here.
you had a Super
I had
Scope.
a Super Scope.
You and like 1,000 other people had the
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
Scope.
My
I'm
friends
sorry.
thought it was like a laser tag thing. I was like,
If you
no.
if if you have never seen the Super Scope,
Oh, it's
go
incredible.
look it up. It's
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 it's it's
ridiculous.
it was supposed to be like a rifle that you could like. It was great.
Yeah, and the 64. Okay, so the interesting thing about the 64 was the controller design. Last time we saw a 3 stick
Yeah,
controller, but it had a port in the bottom for various things.
yeah.
You
You could
had
put in the Rumble Pack. You got the memory cards.
the
There was
jumper
with
pack
Pokemon
was the thing.
Stadium. They released the Game Boy player that you could stick in there, and you could play your Game Boy games on your 64. It had the microphone that you could use with Hey You Pikachu.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, tons of. And then the 64 itself had an upgradable RAM slot in it. Like you could take out the RAM and like get the expansion pack and stick it in the top of the console,
right.
and you'd get a higher resolution
In
output.
high
It doubled
version,
the RAM in the console. Like
it had a voice recognition unit. It had a microphone. It was called the VRU, and it
yeah,
was good for the Hey You Pikachu game
yeah,
and Denture to Go 64.
yeah.
So I mean, like there were multiple things that were available for this stuff. It had a 28-bit modem on a Nintendo cartridge that you could use to connect to RANnet, which is the thing that no one remembers except for maybe 6 people. But regardless, like
No, man. Yeah, you
I
stuck it in the bottom of the 64. Like if you ever look at the bottom of your 64, there's a
no
large
no
openable.
this modem was a cartridge. Like I had one. I actually had one, and you connected it to your phone line, and it would connect you to RadNet. That's dating me a little bit. It's pretty impressive.
That's
It
really interesting.
exists.
I'd love to hear more about that one. I'm gonna look that up later.
Yeah, please do.
That sounds incredible. Like as somebody who
It,
like was super into 64, I never heard of that.
are you see? Okay, no, it's
Yeah.
legit. It was dumb. It was a terrible thing. It never worked. RANnet was an effort that tried and never succeeded.
Okay.
But I mean, even the man, I always forget. I always want to call it the Dreamcast. But it's not a Dreamcast. I had a Dreamcast, never had a GameCube, so I always wanted to I always call it the Dreamcast. But like even that thing had like the DK bongos and the beat pad, had a keyboard.
Yep.
It had a whole bunch of other had all sorts of stupid stuff. That's what Nintendo does. Nintendo's like, this is a thing. We're gonna expand on it, and we're gonna make it ridiculous. And even through the Wii, like
Well,
the
the
concept of
GameCube
the Wii
itself had an accelerometer built in. Have you ever played Super
didn't
Monkey
really.
Ball?
So I've watched Super Monkey Ball runs at GDQ, but I've never actually played it.
Yeah, so Super Monkey Ball, there's an accelerometer in the GameCube, and the way you play that game is you hold the GameCube in your hands and you tilt it around, and that causes the plane that your ball is on to like tilt around with it, so you can like get the ball to go into the hole or whatever.
You're fucking, you're
No,
fucking
I'm not
kidding me.
fucking with you. You actually hold the thing and you like tilt it around to get it to.
That's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the speed runs. I've seen the speed runs, and I think that's
Yeah, no, that's yeah.
but but that's what Nintendo does. Is
Yeah.
they build things for their consoles, and what
And they're awesome most of the time.
no, I mean, not like 8 times out of 10 they're fucking garbage, but the 2 times out of 10 they strike gold, and it's fucking incredible. So will this be garbage? Possibly. Is it going to be gold? I think so. I just
See,
trying to
the
think of the
thing that
approach.
confuses me most about the Labo isn't the idea that you make your own controllers, right? Because like anybody can go and cut out some
Right.
cardboard and like design how they want the ends of the Switch to fit into. You can make whatever you want, which is a
Yeah.
cool idea. But the thing that confuses me about the Labo is how do you develop for it? Because you can't like you give the end user like if I buy a Labo, I'm buying what am I buying? I'm buying cardboard. Is that what I'm buying? And like maybe like a code to scan that the Switch can interpret using Labo software to like have a game that it downloads maybe. But how do you? So am
Well,
I as an end user supposed to make a game, or am I supposed to buy a game? Like,
no.
is a company supposed to make a game and also ship with it like some cardboard that I can fold up and put my Switch into to play with it, or is what? How does it work?
So the best way that I can kind of describe this, in my opinion, um, is the Microsoft Kinect. When the Kinect came
Yeah.
out, Microsoft had a very focused idea on what it was going to do.
Yeah.
But it was when people opened up the technology is when it blew up and became more.
Right.
Um, the whole idea of we wouldn't have AR as we know it, augmented reality, if it wasn't for the Kinect right now. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. The fact that it was one of the first things out there that was capable of consumer products, that was capable of tracking human movement left and right, forward and back in a consumer level product that opened it up for other people. And since it was Microsoft and not Apple, was open for people to make change to go in and understand it, to get the concept a little bit better. Kind of
Mm.
opened up that idea to everybody else. What Nintendo is doing, I feel like is very similar. I mean, and what sucks is Nintendo is very closed-minded, like Apple. This is what we're doing, and it's going to be a pain in the ass for you to get involved in this.
Right.
But they are trying to use every piece of equipment to its fullest potential. The heat mapping sensors on the controllers, the vibration, using the vibration part of it to maneuver things around. Like, they're looking at things outside the normal box of what you would use them for, and I highly respect that. They said we could take this and we can use this in a way that most people wouldn't expect us to, and create something entertaining out of it. So do I expect these games to be triple A level, like blockbuster things? No. This is going to be on the lines of like Wii Sports
Yeah.
and like that kind of stuff. It's
Oh, of
it's gonna
course.
be
Yeah. Yeah.
it's gonna be cute little things to kind of, but at the same time, the cost is so low because it's cardboard. And what that's gonna do is if they may not get to this point, I hope they do. Is that they hope they open it up a little bit to what other people can do. Because what you're saying is we can use these items with cards, which is a common everyday piece of thing, and we can create brand new fun things with it. Now, what can you do with it? You know,
Right.
you have
That's my
cardboard
question to
available.
begin with, because I understand Nintendo will provide cardboards with like designs for cutouts and how you build it and how you fold it, and they'll
Right.
provide software to work with each one so that the controller that you've built kind of makes sense. But at the same time, I wonder a lot about the Labo in general. Like, is the what? My question is very much what is Labo? Is it a concept or is it an actual piece of software? Because if it's a piece of software, that must mean it's an interpreter of some type, which means it must be able to take data, convert it into some type of a game, and then interact with your controller in some way, however your cardboard is configured to use it, to do something interesting and creative with it. And I'm wondering if they expect people to, similar to Mario Maker, be able to make content that other people can use with Labo, or if Nintendo themselves are just going to be the ones who are making the games and the cutout designs and then providing those to people. Like, I don't know what Labo itself is. Is it a concept
Well,
of like the
I,
name for the system, or is it the actual software on the Switch? Is there actual software?
yeah, there is software. There is software, like so the things like the RC cars and stuff you control with the actual Switch screen itself, or you can use the heat mapping sensors with the way that the stuff is on the front of the control on the front of the Joy-Con.
Mm.
So there is software involved, and that's why I'm like it's very much like Wii U Sports, where it's like a software program that
Right, right.
lets you access these different programs. But I'm hoping that they open this up to other people being able to do things with it, because it's gonna be interesting to see what. Excuse me. Excuse me.
You're excused.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, this is something I'm passionate about, and I feel the fire rumbling in my belly about it. Uh, I, I think Nintendo would be doing a disservice if they did not open this up for other people to create with it.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying because you're coming out of the gate and you're saying we can do this with cardboard. This is something everyone has access to. But if you lock it down into that, then you're. I, words are hard. It's trying to figure out. It would be very disappointing if Nintendo doesn't the public. I don't know how you feel about it, but just the response of what people have been able to do in the Connect. I would love to see the Labo open that up for people to do with what the Switch can do.
I still don't understand what it is. I still have no idea what Labo actually is. I really don't. I don't understand what it is. Because you say that it's a piece of software. Okay. But Wii Sports, since we're relating it to that kind of thing, was also a piece of software that you used your Wiimote and Nunchuck to do stuff with. But Wii Sports had a series of independent pieces of software within it. Wii Bowling was a piece. Wii Tennis. Wii golf. All that stuff. They were all independent
This
pieces.
is exactly what Labo is.
Right. Okay. So I'm asking then, even if you can come up with your own design for a way to use Labo, which in my interpretation is a controller. I mean, we've got a list of things here that are coming out. I mean, one controller is the RC cars, one controller is the fishing rod, one controller is the house, the motorbike, the piano. These are all designs of cardboard that are cut out to be used in a different way that you put the two ends of the Switch controller into to interact with that software somehow, right? So even if I, the end user, am able to invent a new way to fold cardboard to make a new type of interaction, like a new type of controller, can I also make software to use with it? Like, can I make a game that uses that?
So as Nintendo does, they're like Apple. They're very closed in what the programming ability isn't there yet. I hope they open it up for people to do. I feel like there is a very wide spectrum of what people can accomplish with this, and there will be companies that will program different things that you can do with the Joy Cons. It's at the end of the day, it's software. You can hack it, you can get into it, you can it, so on and so forth. Will Nintendo will release officially licensed user created stuff?
I honestly
Probably
believe
not.
they won't. And I believe they won't, because if you want to allow end users to make games, it has to be similar to how Mario Maker is, or it has to be similar to how on the PS3 Little Big Planet was. You have to have like a level editor or some type of already in there built way to make levels or make a game or something. But you can't just give people the ability to write code and execute it on your platform and like create assets and add sounds and voices and all that stuff. You can't give that to people, because if you give them that ability, it implies that you have given them also access to the command layer of your software, and Nintendo has very specifically locked that down in the past, and so I don't think that they'll allow that, if that makes sense. Now, what they might do is partner with another company to say, okay, well, maybe, I don't know, Toys R Us makes a game about their giraffe, right? And they create a cardboard cutout, and then you can pay, say, $1.50 or something to get that game um,
I
on your
hope they don't do
Labo.
that.
Like you go to a Toys R Us and you pay whatever for the package and you take it home and you cut out the cardboard and then maybe you put the disc in and it runs using Labo, right? But like in terms of like an end user, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think Nintendo would be making a huge mistake if they didn't open it up for everybody else. Um, I think there were some great. So from the industry I'm in, yeah, R.I.P. Toys R Us. I think that was the worst comparison you can. But at the same time, in the industry that I'm in, I do a lot of medical conferences, and a lot of medical advancements have happened because of the Connect, because of Microsoft Connect, and because of the fact that Microsoft is more of a third, like open system that you can go in and
Yeah,
program things to.
yeah,
Um, there have been some great advancement. So I think Nintendo has opened up, maybe not so much like medical advancement type stuff, but they've opened up a door of creativity that not even they can control. Like there are people out there that will come out with some incredible stuff if they can get access to the idea of being able to get into the Joy-Con program.
yeah.
So the hacker community out there, they may be able to do it, they may not be able to do it. I don't know, but I feel like the overall level of like you're the sky's the limit with this. And it would be a big disservice for Nintendo to shut that down to content creators or creators just in general, inventors, because there's so much that those little Joy Cons can do that we don't even know at this point. They have heat mapping systems. They have rumble technology inside of them. They've got little tiny actual cameras inside. Like there's all sorts of stuff going on. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Uh,
hopefully good things.
the in my opinion, this is the floodgate opening, and we'll see what happens in the next 6 months to a year.
Fair. So,
Sorry, I got a little bit. I got a little. I
oh
got a
no,
little
yeah,
verklempt.
dude, absolutely no. I understand 100%. Um, so I can't think of a good segue because I don't think there's a good segue.
Nah, there's no good sway. There's no good segues at this point.
But I do want to move
No.
on.
Okay, that's
We've
fair.
talked about this. It's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
Let's put it to bed before we kill it. Um, do you like RPGs?
Oh man, that is a very
What?
that's a very loaded.
I hear you put
I
100 hours into Nino Kuni. Do you like RPGs?
right, exactly. No, I absolutely love RPGs. Role playing games are a core piece of who I am as a human being, and not so much for the reasons that a lot of people expect. Um, for me personally, and I know this is part of the prep talk that we had figured out. You had written a lot of notes here about a bunch of different stuff, and
I did.
I'm gonna skip a lot of this here right
Skip it
here.
all.
I'm gonna skip the specific games. Uh, I'm a '80s baby, born in
We're going down to
'84.
specific games. We're skipping the whole thing.
Yeah,
Forget it. We need to talk about
yeah.
mechanics. Let's go.
Games like Dragon Warrior, games like Final Fantasy One. Those are who what that those are the games that molded who I am right now, because those games they involve story.
Yeah.
There was story to these games. It wasn't an action game. It wasn't bad dudes. It wasn't like, are you bad enough to save the president? Shoot all these guys and then figure it out. It
Yeah.
was very much like, there's a narrative here, and we're going to take this narrative and we're going to make you follow it. And this isn't a game that you blow through. This is a game that you casually go through. Not to say casually. This is a game
Like
that you go through and you
slow
follow.
and methodical and
Yeah.
take your time and experience it. It's not about the moment to moment
And
gameplay. It's about the experience as a whole.
yes, back in the 80s and late 80s, early 90s, when these games Dragon Warrior and Final Fantasy 1 and all that, these were all turn-based role-playing games. These were all take your time, stop for a second. What are you doing? Do this, done and done. And then actions happen, so on and so forth. It was no action adventure RPG where you run around hack and slash and game level. It was stop. Here's the story. Travel. Stop. Here's an encounter. Deal with this encounter. Move on.
For sure. Yeah,
And
some of my favorite some of my favorite games are exactly like that. I mean, you see, I've listed Final Fantasy three different Final Fantasies here that are all kind
yeah,
of the same meat. Final Fantasy 1, 6, and 10 are all kind of the
yeah,
same. Like, it's, I mean, all Final Fantasies are turn based, right? But I feel like these three in particular have a very similar methodology to how you play them, and it starts you off with um, a situation that is immediately understandable and relatable, and then they throw you into a sort of a larger kind of sprawl, and then they give you a hard twist, and then from there it just expands,
yeah.
and it's really cool. So because I have more experience with Final Fantasy 6 and 10 than I do 1, I've only played the first Final Fantasy twice. Um, Personally, my favorite Final Fantasy is actually 10. And
10 was excellent.
which one is that? That's the one with Titus
Yeah,
and Sin and on the Yuna and all that. But
yeah, and Vivi and Lulu and yeah,
yeah. And Aron, the most badass character of all time. Um, but uh, yeah, like it starts you off with. Let me skip off of that and just say this.
okay.
The narrative of those games is written extremely well, and the pacing of those games, how the mechanics interact with the pacing of them, because the mechanics are all about take your time, wait, look at what happens next. In Final Fantasy X, it gives you a turn order. You can see who's going to go next, and you can figure out, like, okay, well, they're going to have, you know, 1, 2, 3 abilities, and I need to take out this guy before
So,
he goes because he's going to take out my guy. And
so you can break this down into two categories.
sure,
You can break this down into the dead stop turn base that has that encompasses Final Fantasy 1 to Final Fantasy 10 to Divinity, uh, the original Sin is a turn based RPG to what other turn based game? Well, the Baldur's Gate series is a turn based, and then you can separate this into your
KOTOR
action
is turn
adventure
based.
RPG. Yeah, KOTOR is also turn-based. Yeah, and you can break this down into action adventure RPGs where it's like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Chrono Trigger, to a degree.
You know, I
Um,
to this day I will forever argue that The Legend of Zelda is not an RPG and has never been, except Zelda 2, which is an actual
okay,
RPG. Because
that's
if you
fair.
think about all the things that make an RPG, you think about turn-based combat, you think about leveling your character up,
Well,
you think
but
about
does turn-based combat define an RPG?
no,
It's what
not
I
alone.
prefer, but
I'm
it's
trying to
not.
build you a series of things that you can use to make an RPG, right? Because Mass Effect doesn't have turn-based combat, but just because that doesn't have turn-based combat doesn't mean that's not an
It's not an
RPG,
RPG.
right?
No,
Mass
an
Effect is
RPG is.
RPG-esque. It has elements, but what I'm
Let's
getting at
break
is
it.
I don't think
Let's break it down.
sure.
Let's break it down into literally what it stands for. It's a role playing game. You play a
Unfor-
role in the game that levels up in some way,
you've
shape, or form.
now covered like every game because you play the
Every
role
game,
of someone in every game.
every game. that levels up. Super Mario doesn't necessarily level. He gets
Have you played
strong.
Mario
He gets.
RPG?
I have played. No, Legend of the Seven Swords is fantastic, and yes, that is very much our
Stars.
star.
Just
I'm
that's right.
sorry. This is this is a three-quarters of the way finished bottle of whiskey, and
All
that's
good.
just the world that I'm living in right now.
All
I'm
good.
sorry if I get a couple of words wrong. No, but Legend of the Seven Stars is fantastic, and I think I think the characters are fantastic. Gino is the only one that I'm like, man, who like he isn't relevant at all. But the idea of the role playing game, in my mind, is that you're growing a character, playing a character, and you're taking their perspective, and then you're gaining levels as you accomplish things going on. So I consider things like Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I consider that an RPG, but I don't necessarily consider the original Legend of Zelda an RPG because the
So
I
what
made
makes the difference between the original Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past then? Between those two, what makes the original not an RPG and Link to the Past does qualify?
and actually as I'm saying this out loud, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with where you're about to go with this. I think the level of story plays into it a lot as well.
Sure.
Because there's not necessarily where the original Legend of Zelda was save the princess, she's in Castle 8, done and done. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past starts you out with meeting the princess. Now I have a goal. I have to grow into the goal that I have to accomplish.
Sure.
And I think the storytelling plays a big role in RPGs that a lot of other games don't have.
Absolutely.
Um,
The I think the I think one of the big arguments that I make for The Legend of Zelda not being an RPG is the scope of the story. So just hear me out on this one. In Final Fantasy VI, you you start as a general on a airship, and you go and you perform this task for the king, and then you begin to doubt yourself, and then you go and you meet with the king, and you're expelled from the airships, and or from the, I forget the name of it, but that brigade, and then you go off and you meet these other people, and you develop relationships with them, and then they join you, and they all have an individual story that they want to tell that takes hours to accomplish and find the whole thing. And along the way, there are huge twists and just wide branching narrative that gets you to eventually the end of the game where you question, whether or not somebody's actually evil, and then you can come to like an understanding of, well, maybe this guy is really just at this for a different reason, but he's still our enemy, but maybe he's not outright evil. And it gets into this like complex, deep narrative that I don't feel The Legend of Zelda has ever had. And this is not a complaint against Zelda. I love the legend of Zelda. The idea that there are three kind of ideas that always commingle, and time repeats itself, right? History repeats itself. And in The Legend of Zelda, in any given game, you meet interesting characters, and sometimes they're funny, and sometimes they're a little bit complex, or sometimes they're deep. But no character in The Legend of Zelda has a deep, branching, fascinating story. Ganon is always evil. I've never seen an iteration of The Legend of Zelda where Ganon wasn't evil. Straight, pure, definitely evil, right? I've never seen an iteration of The Legend of Zelda where Zelda wasn't wise and pure and good, right? And I've never seen an iteration of The Legend of Zelda where Link wasn't courageous and brave and heroic, right?
okay.
They always fall into this thing, and it's never expounded upon. It's never like gone deep into. Breath of the Wild kind of went into Zelda's story a little bit, and they tried with a couple of things, but for reasons I'm not going to get super into in this conversation, I don't really consider Breath of the Wild to be a proper Zelda game. In any case, I don't think that any Legend of Zelda game, as compared to any traditional role-playing game, has the same level of narrative.
Okay.
Do you see where I'm coming from and like why
I know.
I make this
I
distinction?
no, I absolutely do.
And then as a
And,
convention of language, role playing game RPG just kind of became the thing that we attached to um, like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and Mario RPG and all this stuff because it was the first type of game that existed where you really took on the role of someone, right? Because I mean, before okay, are you a bad enough dude to save the president? You're a guy who's got to go save the president. Like, it's not so much taking, like, you're not really becoming that character. You're not meeting people he knows. There's no storyline involved with that, really. It's you have a goal, go do it, right? In the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, you're playing as, the four turtles and
yeah,
you got to go, save April O'Neil, right? Like, it's the thing. You got
yeah.
to defeat Splinter.
Get through these 8 levels and then win the game.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think the reason that we have applied the term role playing game to traditional RPGs that involve leveling systems and HP counters and experience and magic spells and amounts of money that you have to spend is because those were the first games that really allowed you to take the role of someone on a journey and experience what it's like to be them over the course of a long period of time as they interact with the world around them. As opposed to how, if you looked at this from a literal perspective, a role playing game is anything where you take on a role. And technically, when I'm playing Pac Man, I am the role of Pac Man, and my job is to eat dots, right? If you want to get really literal about it. So I think as a convention of language, it's not necessarily fair that we use the term role playing to define this genre. But
Okay.
because we can't really change it, I don't necessarily look at role playing games the way that I look at The Legend of Zelda because The Legend of Zelda doesn't have experience bars and it does I give you that it does have heart containers that you can increase your hearts and I
Right.
think that's
You can
RPG-esque,
still.
but I feel like that's such a isolated incident in that game as opposed to the rest of the stuff. Like you get equipment, which is cool, but each piece of equipment does something different, which isn't really an RPG trope. If you get a new piece of equipment, it replaces something you already had, right? Or
Okay.
do you see what I'm getting at? It doesn't feel like what we think about when we think about an RPG when we talk about Legend of Zelda. We've gotten so off track though.
No,
um,
I mean we have to agree, but we're arguing the fundamentals of what an
yeah,
RPG kind of is. And there was a good message in Twitch chat about the feeling that you're actually involved as yourself and making your own choices instead of being a set story that you can't change.
yeah,
Now, when it comes to that kind of stuff in RPGs, um, that's more of a like an open world like that's a very I'm trying to think of the way that the in a video game sense it's very tough to do
oh yeah,
because video games only have x amount of data that they can have and you can only expound on that so much. That's very much I would say like a Dragons RPG tabletop kind of feeling, which is not an invalid feeling because I think yes, very much in role playing games, the goal is to take on the role of the character and make your own choices and then have that dictate where the story is going. And I think video games have done a good job in the sense, like later on with things like Divinity: Original Sin and some of the later on PS4 kind of RPGs or Fable. Fable's a great example of this, where you can make a decision in game and it will change the course of your story.
sure.
Uh, the Witcher does a good job at this too. I feel like Dark Souls, I think, to a degree, does a good job at this. I don't know how you feel about. I don't know how do
I
you.
disagree. I think
Okay,
about Dark Souls specifically, I don't think there's anything
yeah,
that you can do
yeah.
that can
I think
change anything in Dark Souls. Maybe NPC interactions, but the end of the game is still the end of the game, and that's how it ends.
yeah. I felt like maybe I guess second kind of a pro, and I get that. So I may have overstepped my bounds on that one,
Well, I
but I
think
do feel like that
it's
has
hard to
a
use
lot
Dark
of
Souls as an
RPG elements.
analogy for anything aside from difficulty, just because Dark Souls is so unique as a concept in the way
Yeah,
that it's presented and executed. It's hard to connect it with anything else in a really perfect way.
The story on Dark Souls is pretty much set, but how you approach it is a very interesting and unique kind. At least in my opinion. Uh,
Okay.
so I'll be like the Pokemon, like so the Pokemon series. How do
Yeah.
you feel about the Pokemon series as an?
I think it's an excellent RPG, and I feel like it fits the definition of RPG pretty straight on. At least as I define RPGs, as a very mechanics, a very statistics focused game. Um,
Okay,
that's actually a really good way to define what I think when I think of an RPG. I think of a statistics focused game, a game that is defined by your ability to see and influence the statistics of your character and the characters in your party. Um, but in terms of like how I think about that, I think Pokemon's an amazing example of an RPG because not only do you influence the statistics of your party, it's your party and every other party member that you can store up to 150 of them or however many they have these days. But um, I think Pokemon's a great RPG.
okay.
And that goes for the new ones too. Like I haven't seen the formula on Pokemon change ever, so and it doesn't need to.
No,
It works great how
no,
it
it
is.
doesn't have to.
Yeah.
So what's the difference in the concept of? So, in your opinion,
Yeah.
the difference between like a Pokemon game, very much statistics based, and a game like a Nino, something where your battle situation is very much like you run into the guy on the map, and then you're in a zone that is action adventure hack and slash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are.
They're two
I think
different things,
yo, they
but
are. I
how do
think
they fit into the? How
Pokemon
do they
is
both fit into the RPG genre?
sure. So, Pokemon, I think, is a traditional RPG. When you think about it, it fits all of those tropes. You have a character who goes and he has relationships with other characters, and those are
Yeah,
expounded upon over the course of time. Your
so it has
party's
to be the
managed by
very
mechanics,
best, his
etc.
arch nemesis, so on
Right.
and
Yeah.
so.
So when you think about things like Kuni or Final Fantasy 15 or even Monster Hunter, um, it's those are more of what I'd consider action RPGs. And you start getting into this like weird subgenre of RPG because RPG is such a poorly defined genre to begin with, which is why I like to make the distinction of traditional RPGs because really that's more statistics focused and an action RPG is action focused. So in Monster Hunter, you have statistics for your character. It's all based on your gear, but you'll have resistance to fire or this weapon will cause poison. It's there are still statistics available to you, but the means in which you interact with the world is a different format. So in Monster Hunter, it's you're hacking and you're slashing things. Same thing with Final Fantasy 15. And I haven't played Ni no Kuni, but you said it was like a hack and slash kind of the way
Yeah,
that
you
you
get in.
do combat.
Yeah, the overworld is you get into a combat area circle and you fight inside of it. Um, so what do you think? So JRPG has that's its own category at this point. What do you think the difference between a standard RPG, like what you would consider a standard RPG and a Japanese RPG or a JRPG?
I think I think categorizing JRPGs as a separate genre is a disservice to trying to come up with a good naming scheme. Because
Okay.
technically, Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 6 are both JRPGs. And yet they are so vastly different. Um, Final Fantasy 6 is a traditional RPG, and Final Fantasy 15 is very much an action adventure game with RPG elements. Um, and yet we classify them both in that way, and I don't think that they are. I don't see Final Fantasy 15 as being an RPG. I see it as an action adventure game with RPG elements, and I feel like
Okay.
our naming convention has kind of screwed
As
over how we try to
it's
talk
doing a
about this.
disservice.
Yeah. But as human beings, we like to categorize things. We like it when things fit into a package. We like it when I can say
Yeah,
this is a platformer, and you know what that
right.
means, right? You know
Or
all of
this
its
is action
mechanics, right?
adventure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We like these little boxes, but really, there's so much more nuance and there's so much more complication to it, and you always need more categories, and you always need to get more specific. And even my definitions could probably use more specificity, and yet they suffice for me, but they don't necessarily suffice for you or for the next person to talk about them, right? Um,
Okay.
does that answer your
So
question?
before,
Did I address what your concern was?
uh, yeah, yes and no. I understand your point of view. I feel like JRPG is still like a very defined category that fits a very specific kind of genre of storytelling, but not necessarily feels like it defines to a role of mechanics. But at the same time, I don't disagree with you.
maybe
Um,
maybe we're looking at this from too low of a level.
I mean,
I
maybe
think on a higher level view of this, JRPGs focus on the group and the whole, and Western RPGs focus on the individual. So if you look at, for example, let's use Chrono Trigger. Everybody loves
okay.
Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger is a game about saving the world, but it's also about protecting your party, and it's about how to keep the group together, and how everything that you do in the world has to be beneficial for all parties involved in order that the world may be saved, right? It's about creating unity so that chaos can be stopped. As opposed to Western RPGs, for example, Mass Effect, where your individual Commander Shepard goes against the organization and the order because the order has been wrong, and your character has to go change it and become the hero. And it both end in saving the world, saving the galaxy, but in
Right.
Japanese RPGs, it's we have to work together to solve this problem and do this as a group. And in Western RPGs, it's this individual,
It's very
this
much a solo thing.
yeah. Um, so I feel like there's kind of just a big difference there, and I feel like as we define RPGs, because Japanese games are written with Japanese culture, and Western games are written with Western culture, they are different that way. And when you look at the mechanics necessary to make a group look good, statistics work really well. And when you look at the mechanics necessary to make an individual look good, you have to look at individual accomplishments as opposed to a set of statistics that impact your group. Does that make sense?
Okay. No, no, that makes sense. There's a very good comment that was made in the chat room about how
I think my
the
chat's broken.
it's fine. I'm right there with it. Somebody has said that it is very interesting to them go about classifying RPGs and strategy games. Well, real time RTSs like StarCraft, Pikmin, Warcraft 3, and all those kinds aren't usually considered RPGs. Turn based strategy games like Fire Emblem, the Disgaea series, Tactics Ogre just kind of are. Um, I feel like real time strategy games where there's almost like a different level of it's a different storytelling system for real-time strategy games. So games like StarCraft and like Warcraft, they have an overarching story, but the game themselves are like a top-down, like build. You must construct more pylons,
Yeah.
kind of deal. Where games like Fire Emblem, Disgaea, even Final Fantasy Tactics are more of a you can maneuver in this specific. I mean, that's a very.
I think the
I'm being a
distinction.
little.
I think a big distinction to be made between the way that you tell a story in say, Final Fantasy Tactics, as opposed to the way you tell a story in, say, StarCraft, is the amount of attention the player is capable of giving to your narrative at any given time. In a
That's
real-time
yeah,
strategy game, you have to be focused on unit management and your macro and your micro and how you manage your base, how you manage your units in the field, how you're defending, what your opponent is doing, and thinking about all these little kind of smaller interactions. If you look at StarCraft or at Red Alert 2 or any of the Command & Conquer games, you'll see that their storylines are told in cutscenes in between missions, and they also have snippets of video that occur inside of the actual gameplay that are no more than about 15 seconds long. And they usually occur during periods when you are not overwhelmed.
yeah,
So those will happen near
overwhelmed.
the beginning or right near the end. And the reason for that is that you can't pay attention to the narrative and really understand what's going on when you're
But
focused on
the
something
idea of
else.
the idea of the gameplay is person-on-person combat, the person-on-PC combat.
Right, and when you look at like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, it's turn-based. So you can stop in the middle of a turn, and they can give you story, and you can pay attention to it because
Exactly.
you don't need
Yeah.
to be on top of it within the next 3 seconds. You know, you
Right.
can put your Game Boy Advance down for an hour
You
and
can
come
sit it
back.
down and digest the information that is
Exactly,
given
yeah.
to you.
So the
And
way that
take
you're
that
presented
and move forward.
information is it changes just based on how you as a human being are capable of consuming it, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Not to, yeah,
that's that
not to say
difference.
either is wrong.
No, that's
You
those
know,
are
like
just the way that they work. I mean, if I was playing
yeah,
a strategy game, I wouldn't want there to be information constantly thrown at me like that because I couldn't comprehend it. It would make the experience less enjoyable for me. As somebody who enjoys games for the story, I want to be able to enjoy the story. So give it to me in a way that I can enjoy it. And I'm all about gameplay too, but if a game doesn't have a well presented, like well done story, I'm gonna be just me less interested in it. Um,
okay.
so yeah, and I think that as a principle of game design, you want to make sure that your player is capable of absorbing your story because otherwise, why write one? You know. Um,
You're not wrong.
so
You're
the
not wrong.
idea of the idea of action RPGs, if we go back to things like Mass Effect or Ni no Kuni or Monster Hunter, is that you can give a story while the player is doing something because the amount of attention that you have to devote to what you're currently doing can change quite a bit based on the situation. But because you're not worried about 50 things, you're worried about 5 or 6 things, you can give me a person who's talking to me while I'm doing something, and I'll be able to at least understand it and be able to digest that while I'm going along.
So are we we're gonna break this down into because just the way the conversation is kind of broken down into, there are turn-based RPGs. There are action adventure RPGs. There are RTSs. There are action adventure games, and it really comes down to how the story is delivered to you, dependent on how much what you have to focus on at the time. Is that fair to say at this point? Is
Uh,
that's really what the
I don't think I'm trying to define genres at this point or subgenres. I think I'm just making a note.
okay.
Because you had mentioned the difference between the way that a story is told in a strategy game or RTS versus how it's told in a traditional RPG, or like something else. I was just kind of observing the idea that your attention span is different. But I mean, it should go fairly simply to say that a game developer will give you a story in a format that works well with
How
the
they work.
gameplay
Gameplay.
you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think I'm trying to define subgenres based on how the story is told. I think that how the story is told is a result of the type of game you're creating. And maybe it's a mix of the two. Maybe you wanted to tell a story a certain way, and so you made a game that worked well with that type of story. Or maybe you made a game and you wanted to tell a story, and then you had to find a way to put the story in the game that worked well with the game that you've already created.
Okay.
I don't think
That
one
makes sense.
defines the other.
Yeah. No, I think that makes absolute sense. So
Yeah.
I think
So I think our overall question was what makes RPGs fun?
which
And
we never actually answered.
Say again?
Which I don't think we actually ever answered.
No,
What
we
made
definitely didn't
RPG
answer it.
All right.
And I don't think there's one answer. I don't think there's one thing. I think
No,
people enjoy
because for
RPGs for all sorts of different reasons. I like story, and I like managing statistics. I like Excel spreadsheets. Do you know that I played EVE Online for about 2 years recently, and I used to play it back in the day. Cumulative playtime of EVE Online for me is about 5 years.
yeah,
I
I'm
love
very.
that game. And
You've tried to recruit me multiple times,
I
and
definitely
every
have.
time I've said, and
And every time you have denied yourself an experience that will change you irreparably for the rest of your life.
look, I don't have the time to dedicate to that kind of
Oh, I
game.
totally understand. No, EVE Online is not a game, it's a commitment. It's a life
It's a
decision,
it's
okay?
a lifestyle. Yeah,
Similar to Factorio. You don't just sit down and play a game of Factorio, you commit to Factorio, you know.
right.
But
But games that I find fun in the RPGs are things that it's managing attributes like and I feel like that's an overall all encompassing thing through most people who enjoy RPGs. Is just like yeah, you want to manage how each character kind of levels up. So I don't, but I like it on a smaller level than you do when it comes to like things like Eve Online. I like being given a set number and then saying, hey, do with this what you can, and
okay.
then you try to maximize. I'm not a min maxer when it comes to statistics. I'm kind of more of a what makes sense for the character kind of.
Yeah.
And I
So
feel
you're
like that
talking
made
about
sense.
things like Final Fantasy Tactics or like Commandos.
Yes, yes, very much. We're like, I want to level up your job to be maximum, and then maybe we'll level up your job.
Yeah.
I want you to be the best that you can be at what you're doing, and then maybe move on.
I totally understand that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean,
I think
this is the longest episode we've had yet. We're almost at an hour,
this
and
episode is
usually,
50% longer than any other episode we have done.
yeah,
We killed our time constraint, but we had great conversation.
we did. We
Great
had a good
conversation. This
conversation.
was
We had great
really good.
people in chat today. We had people in chat contributing. I thought that was awesome.
Love hearing it.
Feel, yeah, please feel free. Follow us on Discord. The
Yeah.
Discord link's down there.
Stuff is right
Follow us on
down.
yeah, literally underneath. Follow us on the
Yeah.
Instagram and the Twitter. There's a Facebook, same thing.
Yep. We're
Send
on
us an
Discord.
email. Just let us know. You know, like let us know what's going on and what you guys want to hear about.
Yeah.
We've been glad to talk about it. Want to throw some shout outs to Throwzilla and Electric Maestro while we're here because they're chilling in chat currently.
Cool.
And want to appreciate all of everybody Gingerbread Gaming 01. Thank you for contributing and just letting us know what to talk about because most of the time we don't know what we're doing. So
I spent time planning these episodes.
yeah, you do. Actually, you
Well,
spend
so
way
do
more
you.
time than I do. Electric, make sure you're on the Discord. There'll probably 10 more on there.
Sick.
You know what? Looking forward to talking to you more.
Yeah, glad to hear it.
Chris in the upper right hand corner. He also is known as Average Twitter.
That's true. That's true. I'm on.
He streams pretty frequently. Me down
Should
here
I
in the
talk
corner.
about you
I'm
and
also,
you talk about me? Is that what we're doing?
yeah, sure. Actually, fuck it. Let's see what do you got about me? Let's see what's going on.
This down in that direction down there. That's Stunt Mustard. He occasionally streams on Twitch, and when he finds the time. And when he's not doing that, it's because he's working a lot, an unfair amount. So that's about everything I got for you. He's on Twitter at Stunt Mustard. He's available on Discord as well. And ladies, he's single.
That is a fact. That is a factual statement. I'm not going to argue. But yeah, follow Two Dudes One Up on the Discord. Let's chat. Let's become friends. Let us know what you want. Let us know what you guys care about. Like we'll talk about it. We're just kind of talking about the stuff that we care about, and I'm excited to see what you guys have to come up with. So
yeah, let's back with it.
Well,
All right,
thank
that's
you
about
very
it.
much for. Yeah,
Ian,
that's
it's been
about
an
it for
excellent
us this week.
conversation. I hope that you do not have the worst hangover in the world tomorrow.
If I do, it doesn't matter. I'll deal with it.
Fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. You've been a wonderful audience, and we will catch you on the flip side. Have an excellent night.